like confirmation because I get to hang out with my friends.
I'm Ella. I'm 11 years old, and I go to Hoover. Some of my interests/activities are I'm in band. I play the bassoon. I play volleyball. I'm in 4-H, which is held in this church, in this room right here. And I like to read and write. I've been at St. Mark's for about 5 years. Something I love about St. Mark's is that you can be whoever you want to be because originality makes you unique. My favorite activities or memories were making ornaments for Christmas trees when I was in 1st grade, and there were angels and glitter glue and all that.
Hi, I'm Nora. I'm 11. I go to Hoover also. I love everything music. I love to sing. I play piano and saxophone. I've been at St. Mark's my whole life. Something I love about St. Mark's is all the friendly people and everyone is so welcoming. My favorite activity is I remember all the Easter egg hunts we did on Easter morning.
Hi, my name is Austin. I'm 11 years old. I go to Lucas Elementary. I play baseball, basketball, football, and I'm in band, and I think that's all I do. And something I like about St. Mark's is we don't put one service right after another, and that we have time to get up, do whatever you need to do, get a snack or something. And one of my favorite memories is singing "O Come All Ye Faithful" a couple of years ago.
My name is Braun Leopold. I'm also 11, and I am in Troop 250 along with Connor and Adam. And I play the French horn in band. I play soccer. I do many other activities, and I like it here because there's so many good people. Most places, like sometimes at school, there's like a rotten egg, but everyone here is excellent. So, my favorite memory about this church is probably just hanging out with my friends over there playing pool.
Hi, I'm Connor McDowell. I'm 11 years old and in 6th grade at Hoover Elementary. I'm in Boy Scout Troop 250 and I play basketball, soccer, trombone, and other activities. I've attended St. Mark's for about 6 years, and I like St. Mark's because of the environment. I feel like everything is just easy to find and it's never really complicated. And my favorite activity is playing bells because of the accomplishments that we find at the end of the year.
When you founded St. Mark's, were there other United Methodist churches in Iowa City? Why did you decide to start a new church?
There were not any other Methodist churches at the time, other than the First United Methodist Church, which is where I was a member.
There was a Coralville United Methodist that started just a couple of years before, but that was in another conference, and that was Coralville. That wasn't Iowa City.
Why did you decide to start a new church?
Maybe.
Well, there were a couple of reasons. I think for us, and maybe for your parents it was a little different, but for us, our children were very small, and our son Brad, who sings in the choir and plays drums on the fifth, he wasn't even born yet. So the other 3 sons we had were very young, and we didn't feel very welcome down at First United Methodist. Now that's all changed, but I hate to say this, but it wasn't the United Methodist Church then. That didn't happen until '68 when we joined with the United Brethren. And that's where we got the United. We were just the Methodist Church. And so anyway, we wanted a place that was welcoming for children. And it's wonderful to hear about you're also talented, my goodness, and all the things you're involved in. That's wonderful. But that was one big motivation. Another thing, they didn't observe the sacraments very often. Do you know what the 2 sacraments are that we celebrate in our denomination? It's baptism and the Lord's Supper or communion. And that wasn't done very often. They only had the Lord's Supper or communion once a year on Maundy, Thursday, and they didn't do baptisms in church. And baptisms are supposed to be a community thing where babies or adults are baptized, and they just didn't do it. They would do it privately, the pastor would. We thought, that isn't quite right. So those were our reasons. Do you know what your parents?
I don't really know. I was 14 at the time, so I was a freshman in high school. So I was certainly aware of things, and we talked about it as a family, and I think that my parents were eager to help establish a new church because there was a need in the community for it. And so it was a family thing to which we were all committed and dedicated. And it was just an exciting adventure in a lot of ways.
It was exciting.
What kind of group activities, like, were there for children, like youth group or vacation Bible school, Sunday school, like, you know, just like, was there any activities for the younger ones when it first started?
I am sure that there were activities. My memory is not really clear on this. I know that we had a youth group. I don't remember specifics. I remember that the Gene and Earl Phillips, two older sons, were in my same age category, and we were in that group. And then Vern Redout, who I don't think anyone probably knows, you remember, but was, and a couple of the tester children or youth. But I don't have as specific memories as I wish I did. We often did things more as families than as discrete groups, so it was a little different than now. But I'm sure that my memory doesn't serve me well. There were probably lots
But we
of
did
things.
have Sunday school.
Yes, we did have Sunday
right
school.
from the beginning.
Right.
And United Methodist Women Only, it was called Women's Society of Christian Service. And her mother was probably the first president of that. And then when we joined with United Brethren, it became United Methodist Women. And they had United Methodist Men almost from day one, too. And so those things started right away. And the scout troop, we were trying to think last night, it started very early. That was a big thing. Do you remember when? But yeah, scouts have been going.
One of the interesting things for me was that I had been going to First Methodist Church at that time for 10 years. We moved here when I started kindergarten. And the relatively new associate pastor at First Methodist Church was Bob Engel. And so he was the first pastor at St. Mark's. And he was my youth pastor. And so I just felt like I was coming right along with him. So that was part of the reason that I was excited to come as well.
Can you remember how many people there were? Like a lot, a little?
There were 12 at the very first one. And then there were 19. And then it got up to 30s. And after that, they cut off the charter member in September. We started in April, and they cut it off in the end of September. And a couple of families, I hope this, it's too bad because the Phillips came just after that. And so we've always thought of them as charter members, but they actually just missed that deadline. They just moved to Iowa City and started it. Yeah, by about a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But they've been here a long time, and as you said, their sons were involved, and so.
What kinds of things did the youth group and VBO, like, what did they do? Like a certain, you know,
I don't have any
activities?
answers to that.
I don't remember either. Ours were too young at that point for the youth group.
How did being a charter member as a teenager help you grow stronger in your faith as you grew older?
That's for me, partly because I have to leave early. Before I say that, I just want to tell those of you who go to Hoover that I went to Hoover too. I only went to 6th grade there, but so I'm an alum. Well, as a teenager, you were going to soon find out that you're not always thinking about things in an adult fashion because I wasn't an adult. So I was very aware of what was going on, very excited about it, but the intricacies just were not all that relevant to me. So my participation was always positive, but I think I just don't remember the details like the fairs would. There were lots of ways that I think being a charter member made a difference to me. I've already told you that the first pastor sort of came along with me, or I came along with him, and so I felt very comfortable, and also knew a number of the people who were charter members, and so that was good. And my sister and I played the piano often at services. My
hoping you were
sister
gonna
more
say
often than I, but that went on for several years, and we felt very much a part
She and her
of that.
sister, very good pianists.
So I would say that in addition to my parents being role models, and they were not only charter members, but then came back in 2005, so they were here for a long time, and then they came back and were very active throughout the state in a lot of United Methodist things. That really the church and the church family played a huge role in developing my decision making and in developing the ways I think about and live out social justice experiences. And I think that that would have come along had I not been part of this church. But I think being in a small group that was so supportive and so interactive really helped me along my faith journey in ways that were, I think, extraordinary. And my parents, of course, were a big part of that. The other thing that I did, so not so much as a member, but obviously I was a member, was both my sister and I worked as the church secretary while we were in college, not at the same time, but at different times. And so we were the ones who typed the bulletins and all of that kind of stuff. And communion Sundays were really not what we liked because it was the old time, it was the old days. There weren't copiers. And so we used old typewriters, and part of the things we got from an old band of stuff that went around to form a dictaphone.
Mimeographs.
And the stencil was the worst because communion bulletins were very long. And you really had to almost sit on the typewriter to make the letters show. And then after you got it typed, you put it on this machine that it wrapped around, and then you got out this big can of viscous, thick, yucky stuff that you had to brush on it before you rolled out the pages. And then, of course, you had to put it together. And we both just dreaded that. It took forever, and we looked awful by the time we finished.
Was it purple?
It was purple,
Oh,
yes.
yes, it was
Now, it's
a
not
purple.
dittos. Stencils are even different. The dittos were kind of blue, but that experience was really something else. Being part of the St. Mark's family was a totally different experience from that, but you can't imagine what to go through. And I did. I'm going to have to leave early this morning, so I'm going to kind of jump ahead a little bit with the things I want to share. And I only want the children to look at this now. The adults can look at it later because there's a challenge included in the picture that I brought. The first picture, which is this one at the top, actually shows me on my wedding day at the original building. The only reason that we printed that out is it shows a little bit of the building that's now Willow Wind School. And so you can see just in the background, and here I am, I was the bride. And then my parents, Buford Garner and Bernice Garner, and my husband, Steve Schomburg. Now, the other picture was we had, there are a lot of homes that have great rooms rather than a separate living room and dining room and kitchen. Well, we had kind of a great room with a kitchen section, and the rest of it was a big room that could be used very flexibly because we didn't have pews. We had chairs that could be moved
folding
around,
chairs.
and we could do all kinds of things. And I don't remember exactly the kind of piano that we had. But anyway, I was married at First Methodist Church downtown because it was larger. I suppose also because it was more traditional. I don't know exactly why. But anyway, that's where I was married. But my reception was here. And so this shows all my friends and then St. Mark's friends and people who helped with my reception. And the challenge that I brought with me, not for you to do now, but you can do it if you want to later on, is that one of these people, only one, is still an active member at St. Mark's. And guess what? Even the adults in this room, with the exception of us, I think, don't know. I'm going to show the theirs for just a second here. The bottom picture. Someone is still an active member.
I couldn't
Don't say
figure
anything.
it out, guys.
No? There's some others you know. It might be a challenge for them too.
It may be.
I can't see.
I know you can't see. I'm going to
We'll
pass it
look
around.
at
I just wanted them
after,
to
yeah, when we're done.
see because I think they might know. I think we're going to have to give them a challenge later.
Okay, I figured.
I don't
Sure
want you
I
to
will.
concentrate on that now, but I just wanted to show you that because I think it's interesting that one of those people, because
Yes.
guess how long I will have been married next summer? 50 years, so that's 50, almost 50 years ago. So,
Janie, did you get confirmed here too?
no, I was
No,
confirmed
you were confirmed.
at first. Can I say one more thing
Oh,
before we
yes,
leave?
of course.
Okay. I was very active in Wesley Foundation when I was a student at the University of Iowa and did a number of things there. And I think because of my experiences here at St. Mark's and with Bob Engel and because of my parents, one of my peak experiences in looking at the bigger picture of what I think helped me with my decision making and looks at social justice was that in December of 1964, I went to a national student meeting of Methodists in Lincoln, Nebraska, called a Quadrennial Conference. And our keynote speaker was Martin Luther King Jr. And I have to tell you, even today, that gives me the chills because not only hearing him, but at the end, 4,000 of us, all of us students from all over the U.S., stood up and sang, "We shall overcome" with him.
Oh, cool.
How many of you, have you ever sung "We shall overcome"? Or maybe in other places? And that I consider to be one of my peak experiences, and I think being a St. Mark's charter member was part of moving into those kinds of experiences. So every Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I relive that experience, and it's pretty special.
Jeannie, would you also, do you have time to just say something about Wesley Foundation? I don't know if they know about Wesley Foundation.
Oh, I'm
We've-
sorry.
we've-
Wesley Foundation is located by the First United Methodist Church downtown, and it is for students at the University of Iowa. There are all kinds of programming, there are worship services, there are all kinds of classes. It's been a long time since I've been involved. We did lots of service projects, and one of the service projects I remember on a spring break was going to a settlement house in Chicago and painting there. And another thing that I remember, and I'm not sure, do the United Methodists still sponsor Rust College in Mississippi?
I would assume so.
I
would
also
need to
went,
check
that at
out.
that time, it was an all-black college, and we went down there during spring break and did work projects with the students there. So I had some very interesting experiences with that, not to speak of the fact that I also met my husband there. So,
I have a question. Do you, any of you guys recognize her parents' last name? Yeah? There you go.
I have a friend that goes to that
Dang
school.
it. Go.
that was very special for our family.
I don't know where.
My father was the superintendent of schools here in Iowa City. Actually, he came as the principal of City High in 1950. He did that for 2 years, and then he became superintendent, and he was superintendent for 17, I believe. I'd have to think about that subtraction, but for a long time, and then he did a variety of other things outside of Iowa City. And so, having a school named after him would have pleased him a great deal. Unfortunately, he passed away just a few days before he was named. He knew his name had been proposed, but also a lot of other names had too. But was a very special time for our family, a special way to remember him.
And when I came and I was teaching, he was the superintendent of
Yes.
schools
Did,
when I was teaching here.
yes. Did you have to interview with him? Is that how they did it then or not?
I'll tell you another story. No, I didn't interview with him, but I had to resign with him.
Oh, I know that's, I know
Yeah,
that
we
story.
won't go there.
No, we won't
With
go
this
there.
group, we have other things.
But for the Hoover kids, that I think when we did the Hoover anniversary a few years ago, your dad signed the letters inviting President
He
Hoover
did.
to come to
And I came
the
to that
to the grand
celebration.
opening. Yeah.
I had never seen that letter.
Nora's mom was involved in digging out all that history. So
But when I tell people that my father met Herbert Hoover and spent a lot of time with him at that time, they just look at me as if I have to be crazy. That couldn't happen. So I always have fun talking about that. So I'm trying to think of, I'm sorry, I have to leave to
that's
go
okay,
to my
that's
own
okay.
church. I think I've said everything. Oh, I know, a couple of the other things. The first place we met was the Odd Fellows Hall in downtown Iowa City.
But we met at the country church first.
Was it in the summer? I knew we met there in the summer. And the old brick church my mother dearly loved, because when Mr. Engel, the first pastor, when his oldest son would get fussy, she would get to take him out and sit on a tombstone and quiet him
Little
down.
cemetery there.
Services.
It was neat.
And that was always a very, very special memory of her. She's just passed away just short of 3 years ago. But anytime she thought about St. Mark's or talked about St. Mark's, that was always the very first thing that she thought of. So after that summer, then, we met in the Oddfellows Hall, which was downtown. And that is, I don't know how to explain it. It's a fraternal organization that has a lot of ritual with it and a lot of symbols. And my sister and I was 14 and she was 17, we used to get the giggles because there were all kinds of interesting things to look at up near the top on the wall and the ceiling. There was serpents and other kinds of symbols. And somehow, being in church, that didn't, it just seemed like it maybe wasn't a fit. And so we got the giggles, which was not very good.
but you didn't have to go out and sit on a tombstone.
No, I didn't have to go sit out on a tombstone. So those were two things that I wanted to be sure and mention. And I'm sorry I have to leave, but it's been fun meeting you, and I think this is a neat project. And I'm sure you're going to hear lots more interesting things and probably truer memories from the fairs than from me as a kid.
No, I think yours are.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Janie.
How did you get the money to start the church, and what other challenges were there in getting started?
One of the things that reminded, there was a builders club. There still is a builders club. About once a year we get a letter in the mail, and it helps churches get started. I don't remember the exact amount we were given, but I think it was something like $20,000. Now that seems like a lot of money, but when you're starting a new church, it was seed money.
So that was from the state Methodist
That was from the
Church?
state,
Okay.
yes, from the Iowa Conference. And that's a program still going on, and it's to help churches that need some extra money to either sometimes to expand because they need to build on, because they have grown, or they need to modernize so that it makes it easier for people who have had handicaps. Some of the older churches they have too many steps, so you've got to do things. But it's for new churches. And so that was one of the things. Do you remember what else? I think we raised money, we all helped. And I can't remember fundraisers that we may have had, but we did. And we tried to be very, very welcoming. Anytime anybody new came, we really went out of our way to meet them. And we visited them at home. I remember we were given a list of people that had expressed some interest, and we went and visited some of those people in their homes to see if they would be interested. So
you weren't just, it wasn't just people from the First Methodist Church?
No,
You were
no.
inviting people who were
anybody,
maybe
some of the
blind.
people were members otherwhere, some people were not members anywhere. So it did vary. And I don't know how many of what. I don't know that.
So Alice, you kind of answered the first part of your question, but what is the second part?
How diverse was the membership, like revolving around the ages, the gender, the race?
It was young. was mostly young. It wasn't very diverse if you're thinking of different races or nationalities, although there was a young couple from Egypt, and they came because we were St. Mark's, and they looked like any of us, but they were from Egypt. He was a physician, and they were here for about 3 years, and then they moved where it was warmer. They went to Oklahoma, and we became quite good friends with them while they were here. And they had come because, shall I go into the story of how we got named St. Mark's? Because that's why they came.
Yes, uh-huh.
They came because they had come from the church in St. Mark's in Egypt. And you may know your history to know that St. Mark's was one of the, there's a book in the Bible, and he was one of the original disciples. And the legend is, the story is that he went to Egypt, and there's churches named St. Mark's. There are Christians in Egypt, about 10%. Sometimes they have a hard time. But anyway, that's why this couple came to St. Mark's, because they were used to the name St. Mark's, and so they were here. So we've had quite a few diverse over the years, but at the moment, I don't see much, but we've had a number of African American members. We've had some Hispanics, and is it appropriate to say for about 7 years we hosted what became the Korean United Methodist Church here. We also were hosts to the Seventh-day Adventists for about 7 or 8 years, and then the third group we've hosted has been San Marcos, which was a Hispanic or Latino group. So we've had 3 different groups that have been, this has been their home until they could go out on their own. And I maybe went ahead on the question. I'm
That's
sorry.
great. That's great.
When and where did the church first meet, and how many locations have there been?
This is the 4th location. As Janie said, there was that country church that we met in through the summer, but the roof leaked, so we couldn't meet there longer. That church is gone. The cemetery is still there. And we'd have potlucks out there every Sunday afterwards. That was fun. And then the Oddfellows Hall, which is gone, and then what is now Willow Wind School. We built that building, and it was to be the first section, and then we had the opportunity to build on this location. So that was 3. And what was the other part of it?
When did the church and where did the church
How many?
Yeah. Okay. And should I speak about how the name came? Is that part of your question, or am I jumping ahead?
No, go ahead. That's fine.
We were organized in April, and Pastor Engel knew that the 25th was St. Mark's, the celebration of St. Mark. And so he mentioned this, and we all liked that idea, so we voted on it and said, okay, St. Mark's. We were organized on the 25th. That was St. Mark's celebration. That was, I don't know whether that was supposed to be when he was martyred. I don't know that detail, but I kind of think so. So that's how we came to be St. Mark's.
Was St. Mark's.
Pardon?
It was April 25th, St. Mark's. That's my birthday.
It is. I thought that. You and St. Mark's had the same birthday. Well, that's interesting.
Hunter, maybe you could do some research for us on St. Mark's. That would be good.
Also, it would be fun.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it would.
I want to have a follow-up question about the potluck, if that's okay. Sorry, Nora, I know you were next. How did you have potlucks every Sunday for how long?
Well, that's what I'm remembering, but maybe, like, the memory may be wrong, but do you remember that?
Well, I
My
asked
memory
because
is
oh, I remember the first time my family came to St. Mark's, and I
Okay.
would have been in kindergarten.
Probably.
So it was meeting at what is now Willow Wind School, and there was a potluck that day. So that's why I voted to continue going to St. Mark's.
Because we had
I thought it was
potluck.
great. Yeah, the ladies all said, "Come and eat. This is, join
I
us."
suspect we got to be once a month. I
Okay.
think for a while we did it, but I think in the summer we kind of did it, and everybody just brought whatever, and we all shared around and sat on the tombstones or had blankets and sat. And it wasn't sacrilegious. It was just, it was fun to read the names and play around, and so. But I suspect we did them for. Yeah, I'd kind of forgot about doing it later.
Yeah. Okay.
What non-Sunday activities or service projects have you done?
Well, that's kind of a long list. You all have heard of free lunch, and we didn't start it. By we, I mean St. Mark's. When I saying we, I mean St. Mark. But we were early on helping with it. And there were people like Denise Bridigan and Jenny Karsner, and I think there was another one, and myself. We thought this is something we'd like to do. So that's been a long time activity. Let's see, what else? Back to school supplies. I think that started here, but I could be wrong. Marshall Lau has been very involved in this, and then now it's become an ecumenical thing. But we may not have started it, but kind of think we did.
Marcia started it with one other person at another church, so it was,
Okay.
yeah, we did.
All right, see, you can fill in because, you know, you can't remember all the details. So that's something we've often done, long time done. Supporting UMCOR, which is the United Committee on Relief. I can remember one time, many, many years ago, we had the man who was the head of the whole country of UMCOR. His name escapes me, but he came and talked here. And, you know, that gets you all enthused about it because he knows that he's been the places around the world. And somebody told me the other day when, you know, there's been a horrible hurricane in Haiti, and there was the earthquake 6 years ago. UMCOR was there, and UMCOR is still there, so they could help when the hurricane came along. So they always have, and they work with other groups. They aren't just out there on their own, but they always are working with other groups. So those are something they've done, and then we've done a lot of volunteer mission, both in the country and out of the country. And there are other people here, and the youth now have done the Appalachian projects, and they've done, well, you've gone lots of places. Where'd they go last summer?
Tennessee.
Tennessee, yes, Hilltop. So there have been a lot of things like that that have gone on, and they've grown. And we've gone down to the base for UMCOR, which is down in Louisiana, where they put all these kits together that some of you know about, and maybe some of your families have helped with. They put those together, and they have to go through every one because sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes they're over generous and they put in 2 of something and you can only have 1, and things like that. So those are all done, and lots of other projects they do down there. So.
What kinds of Bibles and hymnals did you use, and what other resources did you have at the services?
So in the early.
Yeah, a Bible is a Bible. There are lots of editions and there are lots of translations, but the Bible itself is still the Bible. So the Bibles, you know, in one way you'll have more colorful ones, maybe, and more pictures. And there have been the Good News Bibles, there's Phillips translation, and now there's the Message. But the New Revised Edition is probably still one of the standards. And when you spoke of hymn books, I thought, aha, African University is something that we have visited in Zimbabwe. And in 1990, they put a special edition out because Africa University was just getting started. And so they had this on the cover. So this is our personal copy that we bought. In fact, my husband bought it for me for Christmas. 1990, that was a long time ago, long before any of you were around. But this is the hymn book that is in there. It's the same order. And now we have the little hymn books that we have, the black one and then the green one, which are supplemental hymn books, rather than a whole new one, because that's very expensive to do. So
When you were first meeting, though, in the summer, like at the country church, so you were meeting at another church, so you would have had their hymnals and Bibles to use.
But they were United Methodist ones.
They were, oh, okay.
That little chapel or country church was a Methodist chapel. The Lindemans knew about it. That had been their home church. That name, the Lindemans that are here, that was their parents and uncle and aunt that were, so we had that. But I think it was an earlier edition of this.
How was the worship different then versus now?
Well, yeah, that's a hard one to answer. as Janie said, we sat on folding chairs, so that makes it more informal anyway. And, but we used the piano, as she said. We didn't have other instruments. We didn't have an organ until we came to this church. And, but probably the service was a little more formal, and by that I mean we did readings in the back. We usually did a liturgy in the back, and so that people dressed up a lot more. When you went to church, you were worshiping God, so you put on your best clothes and that kind of thing. But people themselves were informal in the way they related to each other. And now we have praise services, and we have all kinds of instruments, and so that, and we have a bigger variety probably. I don't know if that answers it. You can enhance that. Some of you would know some of the changes we've done.
Like the pews. Because back when you had chairs, you had pews.
Pardon?
Adam, I feel like maybe your question has been answered. Do you think? Yeah. Okay, so Connor, let's skip.
In what roles have you served the church, in either in getting it started or over the years?
You want to answer that?
A lot. We know a lot.
Been there, done that.
Been there, done that. Well, we have been very active in attendance and in participation in various all across the church.
Yeah, we've taught Sunday school sometimes separately. One time we taught a class together. You've been president of United Methodist Men. I've been president of United Methodist Women and other things. We've both been on the commission, mission committee. You were for years and years, and I was on it too. And social action committee, consultation of religious communities. I was on that, and we both served on district committees and in the conference. Conference is Iowa Conference, and we used to be the Cedar Rapids district. Now we're the East Central district. That changed a few years back, and it's bigger. It goes way up to Dubuque and Clinton and so forth. And so we've served on a variety.
And you've been a confirmation mentor.
Pardon?
I said, and you've been a confirmation mentor too.
Oh, well, yes, guess we have done that. Yes.
Austin?
How does the church look different today?
Pardon?
How does the church look different today?
How does the church look different?
Yeah. Like if there's anything added on.
And what do you mean by look?
Like if there's a new, like if there wasn't a new, like there's a new area today than there was.
Appearance.
Yeah.
Well, don't know. Pardon?
Is the building used differently?
Oh,
maybe?
okay. Yes, there always been, and there still are many, many activities. That's one of the things that St. Mark's has really tried to do, to open the doors, as we mentioned, the Scouts and Girl Scouts and Daisy. You had Daisy Scouts, didn't you?
We did.
Brownies, so for many years.
4-H.
And 4-H. And yes, 4-H has been here. I know your mother-in-law was very active in that. And all kinds of groups have met here. I think that's one of the things. And so you see a lot of different things up, and it shows. When I was visiting other churches, the one thing you do, you'd go in and you tried to get there ahead of time, one, to find the place, and two, to look around. And you could tell by the bulletin boards what was going on. It's a very good clue to what the activities are in the church. And so here you see we have reading open doors. That's a big thing going on now. You know, we have a preschool and an after school. You know those things, but right.
Was the preschool there before?
It's been there a long time. I'm not sure when it started. Do you
I
know?
think Marshall Lau started it in the 90s.
The preschool? Okay, but it's, yeah, okay, so then it's been going about 26 years, the preschool. And I think the before and after school, that was when kindergartens weren't all day. Part of them were, they were in the process of transitioning. And so they needed that for children who were not going to school in the morning or the afternoon. And so they had a kindergarten class here until all the schools had kindergarten all day. So, yeah, it's changed, but it's always been busy.
What
Yeah.
year was the addition built down here?
You know, I was trying to think of that. It's been, I remembered Pastor Quinlan and his wife came back because they had been in the planning, but they had moved on. So it's been at least 15, 18, 20 years.
I would say 94, or
94?
96, something like that.
Okay.
96. So the preschool is probably late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
Because we would have.
So this, all right.
I think late 90s, yeah.
Okay, late
yeah,
90s
Mid to late 90s.
that it was built.
So
Pardon?
I went to the preschool and I also went to the after school.
Oh, you were?
When a few years ago, yeah.
Okay, all right, well then, here's a graduate, that's great. That's neat.
Are there things that we haven't asked that you would want to share? Is there something we,
What do you think?
Did you get married in this church?
Have
Pardon?
anything?
Did you get married here?
Oh, no,
No.
no. We were married where I graduated from high school, Charles City, Iowa. This,
what about your dad, Nancy? Do you want to talk about your dad?
about what?
Your dad, he was a pastor, right? A
Oh.
Methodist pastor?
He was. My father was a pastor, was a minister in the conference, and at that time there was North and South conferences, but he was mostly in the North Conference, and so at that time he was at Charles City. So, so that's he'd actually moved on to be a district superintendent at Spencer, but I graduated from there 2 years before. No, they'd moved 2 years before. I'd graduated from there 5 years before, so that's felt like home. So we were married in Charles City, but no, we weren't married down here. I think the thing that I think we would want to say about St. Mark's that we've tried, and you don't always succeed, that we've really tried to be open and to follow Christ in our activities and in our dealings with people, and you don't always have to be using those words, but you try by the way you behave, by the try you invite people. The radical hospitality idea is something that I think we've tried. If you've heard that term, I don't know if that's a familiar term to you. You've heard that, Diane. But I think that's something we've really tried to do, to be opening and welcoming, as I said. And kids are always important in this church, extremely important, and always welcome. And if a baby cries, so what? The minister can talk over it.